And we've been studying out of the book of 2 Kings. We're at chapter 10, and we left off at verse 11. We were studying about Jehu.
Jehu?
Jehu? Jehu?
Sorry.
Jehu. Jehu was following the prophecy of God that all the descendants of Jezebel would be destroyed. And he destroyed most of them prior to this verse, but now he's going after all of them. Okay? So you can't run from God. Verse 11 says, So Jehu slew all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, and all his great men and his kinfolks and his priests, until he left him none remaining. And he rose and departed and came to Samaria as he was at the shearing house in the way. Jehu met with the brethren of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, Who are ye? And they answered, We are the brethren of Ahaziah, and we go down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, Take them alive. And they took them alive and slew them at the pit of the shearing house, even 42 men, neither left he any of them. Okay. So now in verse 11 we see something called genocide. Get rid of every single family member. You know, and that's has been tried to be done.
Time and time again.
Time and time again, genocide, especially against God's people. Now, of course, this was prophesied this would happen by God, you know, so you know that's going to happen.
Right.
It said he killed everyone that was related to Ahab's house, every warrior. And that warrior, or great man, every great man, the word there is Gadol, which means a warrior. And then it says every kinsfolk. And I thought this was interesting because the word, right there it said yada. Y'all know what yada means.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada, yada. That means I know. Everybody that Ahab knew, he killed. Yada, kinsfolk. Okay? Doesn't necessarily, here is not the word kinsman, not brothers. This word right there is yada. So I thought that was very interesting. Everyone he knew, especially the priest of Baal, were executed. Anybody that had anything to do with the high places, he killed them. Verse 12, between Jezreel and Samaria, there was a large house where they would take and shear the sheep. Now, have you ever been around sheep? What do they smell like? Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah, so you didn't have these shearing houses next to your city.
No.
You would put these things outside the city because they stunk really bad.
They did stink.
Because this is where they would shear them, but they would also slaughter them. Okay.
You know, that's really if you really think about it, that's very thought-provoking when you think about how bad sheep smell.
Yeah.
I mean, because dogs can smell bad, cats can smell, but sheep really, really smell bad.
You know, one time we talked about sheep a lot. You know, we are sheep.
Amen.
You know, we are the sheep of his pasture. But I once learned about sheep from one pastor that was talking about how dirty they are. There's a lot of things about sheep that we are.
Yes, we are.
They're dumb.
Yes, we are.
Uh-huh.
They follow after whatever they can follow. Whatever's in front of them following it, they'll follow.
Yeah.
They cannot clean themselves. Now that's something interesting about a sheep. A dog, a cat, especially a cat. The cat's cleaning itself almost constantly. A sheep has no idea. His fur, I call it fur, wool will grow until it just becomes so matted up the thing will fall over.
Yep.
Unless somebody shears it off.
And they'll walk across stuff and pick stuff up as they go. As their wool, because it's like cotton in a sense.
Yeah.
So anything they brush up against or lay on, it picks it up in their wool. It's just nasty.
And they have to have constant care.
Ain't that where Velcro started?
Pretty much, right? That's right, James.
But we're Christians in the same way.
Yes, we are.
We'll listen to God, we'll argue with Him. You know, we'll go the wrong way. And all of a sudden, God has to pull you back because you've fallen in a hole and you messed up your knee.
Acting
These
like a
sheep-
20-year-old.
What were you running after, little sheep? Little lamb?
The other sheep. It was the other sheep. I wasn't there, but she said she was trying to catch up with those sheep.
Wait for me!
I fell and I can't get up.
Sorry, Joycey, I love you though.
I gotta go home with her, so.
Hope you have a nice warm doghouse.
Yeah, I got a nice warm dog. His doghouse ain't warm. Okay, but they went to this place called Beth Eked. Am I saying that right? Beth Eked, which means the house of binding. They would shear the sheep and then they would bind it in bundles and they would send it to places to make it into clothing. Okay, so these people were meeting there, but this is interesting because Ahaziah, of course, is their brothers had been slain by Arabs. If you look, this wasn't in the book of Kings, but it was in this book of 2 Chronicles 21. These were relatives of Ahaziah, brethren of the same tribe, okay? They were strangers to Samaria and did not know that Ahaziah had been killed as well as Jezebel. Okay? So they came, all these guys are coming to, it says here, that they come to salute the children of the king and the queen. Queen's already dead. We learned that about last week. That was all that was left with her was what? Her head and her hands
and her feet.
and her feet.
Ugh.
The dogs ate everything else. And,
Yucky.
and then we found out about the brethren that they're coming to see. There were 70 of them, and they had their heads chopped off and piled up in the city gate, right?
Yep.
So these people are uninformed. They do not have the internet. They left their tablets at home. Their chargers went down, the batteries went dead, right? So they're not getting the information that they really, really needed because, especially telling Jehu. They asked him, well, what are you doing here? He goes, hey, we've come to see the queen and all the descendants. And he goes, great. Kill them.
Yes!
Yeah.
Kill.
Yeah. Jehu commands his men to go around about them all. There was 42 of them. And they executed every one of them in the shearing pit. All right, in the same manner, I wrote here a note, in the same manner as the sons of Ahab. They didn't say how they killed them, but the common executing force was the sword to the neck. Okay, verse 15. Let's go to verse 15. And when he was departed thence, he lighted on Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him, and he saluted him and said to him, is thine heart right, as mine heart is with thy heart? And Jehonadab answered, it is, if it be, give me thine hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took it up to him into his chariot. And he said, come with me and see my zeal for the Lord. So they made him ride in his chariot, and when he came to Samaria, he slew all that remained unto Ahab in Samaria till he had destroyed him, according to the saying of the Lord, which he spoke to Elijah. Okay. So, after killing the 42 guys, him and his troops with chariots leave, and they meet this guy named Jehonadab. And I like his name. His name means Jehovah is willing. And it says here he's the son of Rechab, which means a rider. Now, one thing about this, when I was studying some commentaries, I found that Josephus describes him as an old friend of Jehu, which is not mentioned here, but it is mentioned, an old friend of Jehu, the Kenites, who were nomads. Okay, so this guy Jehonadab is a Kenite. In other words, he's like a Bedouin. You know what I'm talking about? A roamer following the herds around. That's found in
What did you call him, a Bedouin?
a Bedouin. That's what they are called today in the Middle East. They live in tents and they keep camels.
When I was
sheep.
young, they called them nomads.
Yeah, they call them nomads, but that's what they're called in the Middle East. I mean, not here.
Right.
Okay, and that's found in the Kenites, nomads. That's found in the Bible. 1 Chronicles 2:55, and also Jeremiah 35:6 and 7. We don't have to look that up. It just mentions them. Now, I like what Jehu asked him, is your heart right? And he says, is your heart right like my heart? What does that mean? Is
Are we
your
in
heart
agree- Are we in agreement?
in agreement with what, though? That's my question. I absolutely agree. Following Yahweh. Y'all remember, we're fighting a battle here through this whole book of the high places. No kings can seem to get rid of the high places. And he's trying to purge the Jezebel spirit from the land. If he can get rid of all the descendants, like God had told them way back, they missed it. Remember when the king said, well, we'll spare this king.
Right.
Because he has something I want, rather than doing what God told him to do. Anybody that was involved with Moloch, the god where you throw your children on a copper plate, you get rid of those people. They have
I
nothing.
just don't see the heart. How could they
And even their descendants, you get rid of the children too. And that's hard for us to get in our Christian minds because we don't go around reaping judgment from God. But God was trying to show the Israelite people that the Messiah was coming. And there was an evil spirit against the Messiah being here. But he also had a great plan for us. And this is the thing I like after I study this long enough to realize the plan was for Israel to fall so that the Gentiles could be grafted in.
Yeah.
That's a great plan.
Yeah.
Let the people
Especially
do
for
what they
us.
want to do.
Especially for us, you're right.
Yes, none one of us would
It
be
works for
saved.
me.
If it wasn't for all these failures, we wouldn't have been saved.
Thank you, Lord.
And that's true, you know.
You're right.
And then you got guys like Jehu who's going, I'm the sword of God. And he was.
Yep.
But then he got this guy named Jehonadab. And I'm sure he had the internet because he had heard. You know? And Jehonadab was also the first-hand witness to Jehu fulfilling the prophecy of Elijah to its completion, all the way to everybody that was related to Ahab and Jezebel was killed, except for one thing I found reading the Bible, was that couldn't get rid of the spirit of Jezebel. He
To
could
this
kill the
day.
people. Yeah, he could kill the people, but he couldn't kill that spirit. It's still here to this very day.
Only God can.
That's another reason we need a Savior. You know? Because that's a bad spirit. The spirit of Jezebel is a spirit of prostitution, idolatry, dope. You know what I'm saying? Lots of things that the Jezebel represents in her life.
And I mean, that's just one that we can, I guess, acknowledge easily. I mean, there's so many, and we just don't realize, you know, spirits are eternal.
Yeah, they are. And they've been here forever. Really. Since the fall of the angels. And we don't even know how long that was. I mean, if you think it's... Dake says it was millions of years ago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you read different commentaries.
That was before time, literally.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Let me see what time I got. I still got lots of time. All right. So there we see the annihilation of Ahab's family completely. All right. So that brings us up to verse 18, chapter 10, Jehu's deception. Now Jehu, all good men, they can get tacky, you know. Jehu gathered all the people together and said unto them, and this is interesting. Now Jehu does something. He deceives people. Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu shall serve him much. And therefore call me unto all the prophets of Baal, and all the servants, and all the priests. Let none of them be wanting, for I have a sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did it in subtlety, to the intent that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and proclaim it. Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that there was not a man left that came not. And they came to the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to the other. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, bring forth the vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments. Jehu went and Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal, and said unto the worshippers of Baal, search and look that there be here with you none of the servants of the Lord, but the worshippers of Baal only. Okay, now we're stopping there. This gets pretty intense here. Okay. Now what I want to point out is that this has already happened in our reading. Okay, he had already destroyed the descendants of Baal. So now he's recapping exactly how he did it. Okay? Because we already, the verse there, right, verse 16, it says that, verse 17, that all that remained of the house of Ahab was killed, was destroyed. Okay? So
Right.
now we're looking at, okay, here's more people that are following Baal. Now you'd think the Samaritans would have feared Jehu. But all Jehu had to do was to proclaim a worship service to the god of Baal. Even to the point of saying, if you did not attend, you would be killed. And one of the things about these worship services, these were sexual. You know what I'm saying? These weren't something you'd want to bring your kids to. And so they had all these people assembled. Verse 20, it said he called a solemn assembly, an Asherah, which means a festival holiday. And he called forth prophets. That word is Nebiah, N-A-B-I-Y. They're spokesmen of Baal. He called the servants, the Abad, which are the workers of Baal, and the priests, the Kohen, which are the chief rulers of the Baal temple. So everybody that was involved with ministry called together. And Ahab had built this humongous temple in Samaria. And somehow Jehu was able to convince them that he was sincere about worshiping Baal. He packed everybody into this room, standing room only. Verse 22, he calls forth the vestry. Now, does anybody know what vestry is? I did not know. I had to look it up. Vestry.
I always look at that as like a vestibule, and a vestibule is like a foyer.
That's what I thought, but that's not what it is, okay?
That's kind of, when you go, that's, when I hear it, that's what I think.
Yeah, I looked it up. I had to, because I didn't know what it meant.
Right?
The Hebrew word is meltachah, M-E-L-T-A-C-H-A-H, and it means a wardrobe.
Ah.
Yeah. So he had these the choir robes. Put everybody in choir robes. We have them for all the Baal for the Baal choir. We have the Baal robes for everybody. But I'll tell you something. Little did they know that these weren't choir robes; these were burial robes. Death robes. Yes. Huh? He was marking them. Yes, he was. In fact, he went on to say, and this was pretty smart. Have everyone look for spies of Jehovah. Make sure there's nobody that believes in Jehovah in this room.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we're going to kill all of you. So in reality, he wanted to make sure not to kill innocent people who serve Yahweh.
Right.
Because you got to realize there's a lot of people that worship Baal that were actually worshiping Yahweh. Weird situations, especially at Bethel. We'll learn about that later on, where they had the golden calf. They still worship Yahweh, confused, worshiping two gods. Isn't that interesting how Jesus even mentioned it, how dangerous it is, worshiping two gods?
Two gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
He says you can't worship God and mammon, which is money. So that brings us, I'm almost done here. Can I get through that? No. Okay, if I keep going, I'm going to have too much to share with y'all. So we're going to stop at verse 24, 10:24.
Okay.
And so we haven't slain these guys yet. So next week we will finish studying about the worshipers of Baal, and then also study about Dan and Bethel, the two cities, which to me was a very interesting study. So God bless y'all.